West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Let's begin this hour with the future of elections and our democracy. And a concerning piece out tonight in Politico magazine going in depth about what the Republican Party has been doing nationwide since the 2020 election. That political experts argue is a dress rehearsal for undermining next year's midterms and beyond, writing, quote, "For the first time in American history, the losing candidate refused to concede the election. And rather than dismissing him as a sore loser, a startling number of Americans have followed Donald Trump down his conspiratorial rabbit hole. The safeguards that ensured he left office last January after losing the presidential election may be crumbling. The election officials who certified the counts may no longer be in place next time he falsely claims victory. If Republicans take Congress, a compliant speaker could easily decide it's simply not in his interest to let the party's leader lose. When you live in a democracy, that is a truly terrifying scenario. It is death to democracy by 1,000 cuts. And as of now, the Republican Party is getting away with it. Texas now pushing forward with an election review in 4 counties thanks to the wishes of Donald Trump. It remains unclear why the former president wants answers about results in a state he won, not only because it makes Trump and his flock sore losers and sore winners. But this tactic didn't work out too well for them in Arizona. That Maricopa County fraud, despite lacking integrity, still resulted in Joe Biden being named winner in 2020, and by an even larger margin than first thought. And then there's last night, where Trump held a rally in Georgia, bringing election conspiracy theories to the stage with him. Some of the other speakers last night in Perry were extreme candidates that Trump endorsed to replace politicians. This is the important part, to replace politicians who dare tell the truth about Georgia's election results. That truth being that Joe Biden won Georgia fair and square. These are all things we should be concerned about. The GOP's battle plan against democracy, it is before us, and members of Congress are working to raise the alarm.
It's a political party outside of the constitutional order. It's not agreed to participate according to the rules that we've adopted. So what we're trying to do in the Democratic Party is to defend democracy itself at the county level, at the state level, and at the national level. And what that means for us in Congress is to get to the truth of the January 6th attack, because that literally could be just a dress rehearsal for what we're going to see in 2024 as they continue to perpetuate the big lie.
Words dress rehearsal have never been so scary. Joining us now, former HUD Secretary and MSNBC political analyst Julian Castro, and MSNBC contributor Victoria DeFrancesco. She is Assistant Dean for Civic Engagement at the LBJ School of Public Affairs at the University of Texas at Austin. It is great to see you both. Secretary Castro, I want to start with this wide-reaching effort by the GOP to undermine election results. Washington Post journalist Robert Costa was on Meet the Press this morning discussing Trump's overall strategy. Take a listen.
He wants power back. Our reporting in the book shows these rallies don't get a ton of coverage, but he's out there with this Churchillian-type language. We'll never surrender. We'll never give in, whipping up thousands of people across the country. And the most important thing is not just his personality as the story. He's influencing the Republican Party across the country to now run for office, to be secretaries of state, to be election officials. 2022,
He's bending
2024.
the party to his will, isn't he?
Certainly.
Chilling. So essentially, we have the Republican Party working to install extreme candidates to oversee elections. This is unfolding as the party also pushes the big lie in its effort to pass restrictive voting laws. Secretary Castro, how do you see all of these individual actions building together to undercut our democracy?
The way I see them building together, among other things, is that now you have the duly elected officials in states like Texas and Florida and some folks in Arizona, Georgia, these elected officials who have the power to help rig a system or at least undermine voter confidence in the system, going along with Donald Trump's big lie, acting on his lies and whims because they're deathly afraid of losing in their own primary. And that's what you have going on here in Texas, where Greg Abbott has two primary opponents that are seen as further to the right than him. And so on the same day that Donald Trump sends an open letter saying we need an election audit in Texas, lo and behold, there's an election audit that's announced, but only for the 4 biggest counties in the state. What makes it dangerous is not only that a sizable percentage of Republicans, one of our major parties, believes in it, but also that that's translating into official action in states like Texas. And so it represents a real threat to our democracy.
Secretary Castro, I do want to ask you, do you have a sense of why it is that they want to recount in those 4 counties?
I think that this continues the narrative that they've set of big urban areas versus rural areas in the state, here in Texas and in other places. The fact is that Joe Biden won 3 out of those 4 counties that they've said that they're going to audit. And the governor went on TV today to say, well, this was always in the works. There's an election audit that happens every time we have an election. That's simply not true. He's not telling the truth. This is aimed at undermining confidence, particularly in those places that have gone Democratic. It sends a strong message to that base that there is fraud out there that really doesn't exist. And most of all, this is being done because Greg Abbott has a primary in March that he doesn't want to lose.
Vicky, I want to broaden out a little bit and pull up an opinion piece from the Washington Post, Robert Kagan. He writes, quote, in a little more than a year, it may become impossible to pass legislation to protect the electoral process in 2024. Now it is impossible only because anti-Trump Republicans and even some Democrats refuse to tinker with the filibuster. It is impossible because, despite all that has happened, some people still wish to be good Republicans even as they oppose Trump. These decisions will not wear well as the nation tumbles into full-blown crisis. I want to talk about 2 things here, Vicky. One is the importance of voting rights in this moment and making sure that there is federal legislation that is passed, which is so we cannot take our eye off of that. But also this question that we all circle back to, and I've asked strategists, I've asked former electeds, but for you as a political scientist, I'm wondering, is there going to be a consequence at some point, right? When does the consequence come for Republicans as a party for not just going along with all of this, but being active partners in building these lies and these conspiracies?
So the question is basically, when do we get to the point of overreach? When do the extremities of the Republican Party snap back? Snap back either for the Republicans themselves or for Democrats to get even further mobilized. And that is really key. And I am an optimist, and I do hold out hope that there will be some kind of federal level protection for voting rights, given that that was stripped in 2013 after SCOTUS did that. But the question is, will what is happening right now in Texas push that forward? Because what you said early on, Alicia, is this is death by 1,000 cuts to our democracy. And it is so worrisome because you see it on the one hand, being something that supports the narrative of Donald Trump, right? This is something that he has been pushing. But on the other hand, it really boils down to pure political calculus. And you asked the secretary earlier, why? Why is this happening? And regrettably, I think it is partially that brand of the GOP, but also the worst kept secret in Texas is that Governor Abbott has presidential aspirations and that the calculus is being made that he needs to cultivate this base. So I think that is even more of a reason why that federal level protection needs to be coming down, because we don't have that base of democratic stability that we had before.
It is Monday, the 27th of September of 2021. And you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef. And our daily special is River City Hash Mondays. Yes, we've sliced and diced everything that's been left over from the weekend and repurposed it into a lovely gourmet dish for your gourmand enjoyment indeed. So, I'm feeling a little bit better, knock on wood, because this does come in waves. I woke up this morning, and for the first time, I don't have what they call a brain fog. I felt woozy. I called it feeling woozy. But I suppose the current nomenclature is a brain fog. And I don't have that right at this moment, knock on wood. Who knows, maybe I'll feel a bit under the weather later on, because this insidious disease comes in waves. I was also quite afraid that my quarantine might be lengthened. 10 days is up today. And part of the protocols is going 24 hours without a fever and without taking any fever reducers as well. And I had a fever yesterday and the day before, and that was a little concerning. It didn't stay at 101, but it was doing what it did in the beginning, and that was going to 101, back down to 98. Going to 101, back down to 98. And I started doing that again on Friday and Saturday. And then yesterday it seemed that my temperature just flattened out around 98.6. So hopefully that will remain, and I don't have to experience a longer quarantine. But if I do, it's a good thing. It keeps me away from people. We don't want to give them what I have. It is not anything that I would want my worst enemy to have, because I'm not cruel. I don't wish this upon others, even those I disagree with. So, yeah, don't get this. If you can get vaccinated, it will really help. I hate thinking what this would feel like if I was not vaccinated, because it was not good. It was no fun. Update on my mom. Well, I spoke to her by phone yesterday, and that's the first time that she's spoken on the phone, to be grammatically correct. She sounded a tad weak, but she was able to talk on the phone. She's strong enough to talk on the phone. So slow progress, but progress nonetheless. Her little Yorkie poo, Ginger, who we suspect might be going deaf if she's not already deaf. She does, she expresses all of the symptoms of an animal that would be deaf. So it's a little sad. But nonetheless, Mom wanted to speak to her on the phone, and lo and behold, the dog. I put the phone up to the dog's ear, and Mom was speaking, and her ears pricked up like she could hear Mom. And then did that for not even a few minutes, but enough time for them to speak to each other. And that was good for my mom. But what was funny about Ginger, the Yorkie poo, is after we hung up with my mom. Now, I've failed to mention that I have relented. I never let dogs get up on my bed. Well, I'm let her sleep on my bed because she had a little bit of separation anxiety and she slept on Mom's bed, but Mom's not there. So she needed to be around someone, and, she'd cry a little bit at night. It was a little sad. She misses my mom. But when I spoke with my mom yesterday, Ginger was on my bed. And as soon as we got off the phone with my mother, Ginger wanted off my bed, and she ran into Mom's room looking for her like she was there. So I had to tell her, you were just talking on the phone. Mom will be here in a bit. One of the things that the family has discussed is that it may be that Mom has to go to what's known as a step-down facility. The doctor right now doesn't think that he'll be releasing her for another 3 or 4 days, at least, from the hospital. But she may need to go into the step-down facility, meaning that stepping down from the hospital before she comes home needs a little bit more individualized care, something that would be beyond my capabilities, especially if I'm still sick. I like to think I'm tough, and I don't let anything stop me. Surgeries, illnesses, deaths. I'm the Energizer Bunny. I just keep going on. And so when we first got sick, of course, my mom just needs help daily, regularly, all day anyway, because she's elderly and needs help. And I need to be around. I don't want her falling over. Sometimes she gets vertigo. Sometimes her blood pressure is not good. We have to, it's good for me to be around for that. But in the midst of being sick and still trying to fulfill my duties as a son to an elderly parent, it was not easy. And I remember my sisters, because everything's kind of a blur since we got this, now over a week ago, 10 days, is that my sister said, well, with Mom being in the hospital, that means that you can work on you and get well. Well, geez, I'm still worried about my mom. I still can't sleep because of that. So, I guess. But at the very least, there's certain things I'm not expected to do because Mom's not here. And a lot of my days have been taken up with, well, I'll confess, sleep. Sleep is a curative. Indeed, it is. So, I've been sleeping a bit, a lot more than I'm used to. Fatigue is also another symptom in the midst of this, at least for me. Like I said, I'm the Energizer Bunny. I just keep going on and on and on. But now I find I need to pace myself even more so than just the regular, getting old now that I have to pace myself. So we'll see how I feel during the course of the day. The mornings tend to be fine. The afternoons start getting a little, around noontime, actually. I start feeling like I need to take a nap. Then the afternoons, I don't know, a little lethargic. And then come night, I'm usually up till 11 or even a little bit later getting things ready for the next day. The show, stuff in real life. And now I'm finding that I'm conking out. It's hard to stay up to 10. Which was what I tried to do last night, and I kept dozing off, and I woke up, it was probably around 11, or no, it was 10:30, that's right, and I just turned everything down and shut the computers in and let them run on their own, as the broadcaster is programmed to do. But all communication devices turned off, and I was asleep. And I actually slept fairly soundly throughout the night. I had to get up a couple of times, and you know why. But the dogs slept through the night. They were okay. Forecast of rain today, and we'll get into that. So hoping a little bit had dropped overnight, and just a little bit had. And it's dropped this morning some. Now it's just a bit misty, but we're supposed to get almost a third, not 3/4, a third of an inch or a bit more could be half. So we'll look forward to that, and we'll get more into that during the weather report. So I guess that catches us up to date for at least the personal. Dare I mention the tete-a-tete that I continue to have with these cruel, ghoulish anti-vaxxers? They're the most cruel. You know, we're supposed to feel for them. We're supposed to honor their rights. But they don't give a F about anybody else's rights whatsoever. And I'm over it. I will be lobbying, and I'm not kidding. This is not hyperbole. I will lobby to make it a crime to spread medical disinformation. You want to be an anti-vaxxer? If you're confident you are not spreading medical disinformation, then you have nothing to worry about now, do you? But I got to tell you, every single one of those anti-vaxxers have come at me, calling me a commie, a Nazi, you're an authoritarian, how dare you tell us what to do? I don't care anymore. You're killing people. And as far as I'm concerned, you're willfully trying to kill people. And then mocking us at the same time. You're sociopathic, you're pathological, and they need to be stopped. This is not a free speech issue. No one has a First Amendment right to lie to someone about medical information and then codify it on the county level. The commissioners of the county of Josephine, this is the county right next to us, and I will also count the commissioners from Jackson County, because both of those boards are anti-vax boards. And they throw up roadblocks. And the constitutional sheriffs say that they are bigger than the Constitution. They know what the Constitution says. And they will not enforce any vaccine mandates. This is not about vaccines, though I know to some it was, because we had measles outbreaks in this area because of anti-vaxxers long before the pandemic began. But this is some weird psychological problem that they have. It's pathological. They just want to kick the libs. If a liberal or a Democratic Party member says anything about anything, it is suspect. They are the elites. They think that they know better than the rest of us, while at the same time saying, oh, you're just acting like you know better. Well, you know what? We do. And we back it up with facts, and you back it up with lies. So what does it say about the moral imperative of your argument? That you have to lie. We got idiots in the military, idiots in the police forces, idiots in the fire departments, even idiot nurses and hospital staff who say, we're not going to take the vaccine. Why is it that this vaccine is suspect when all the others that you are required to take to have your job has never been a problem? Why is it this one? Because Donald Trump, in his infinite wisdom, and I mean that sarcastically, they just figured everybody was going to get it. So what if a bunch of people die? That's the way they think. They just wanted it to get over with, but they are idiot know-nothings, and they know nothing. And they need to be kept in check. Because Donald Trump thought it would hurt his numbers. That's why they allowed this to go on. Of course, we must also consider the fact that they do not know how to legislate. When he talked about the cupboards were bare, there was no ventilators. Well, why were they getting rid of all that material in the months leading up to the pandemic? Did they know what was going on? Did they suspect something? Because it's a little too cute by half, if we're going to use that cliche. Don't even have enough nasal swabs? We're the United States of America. Give me a break. How is it that when the Republicans lead, everything falls apart? And yet they hold themselves up as the only example of how America should be, the only example of Republican democracy. They're all about unadulterated power. They don't give one whit about anybody else but their own greed. And it's time it stopped. I will actively lobby to make the spreading of medical disinformation a crime. Okay. On that note, why don't we get into what we have for the rest of the menu here, because we do curate a show. We take some time to do that, and indeed we have. Well, at the top, of course, the GOP plot to bring death to democracy by 1,000 cuts is spreading at the state level. Little laws here, little laws there. You got the fascist Nazi Proud Boys taking over school boards, and we'll get into this first story here, too, about that. 1,000 cuts. I don't know. Might be a lot more than just a cut. Anyway, on the rest of the menu, the racist majority on the Newberg, Oregon School Board has banned educators from displaying Black Lives Matter and gay pride symbols, prompting a torrent of recriminations and threats to boycott the town. Indeed. You know, that's the same town where a teacher's aide came in blackface to protest mask mandates and vaccine mandates. She was just like Rosa Parks, and she dressed up in blackface and thought there was nothing wrong with that. Well, fortunately, she did get fired. Fortunately. Investigators from the NTSB are on site to probe the deadly Amtrak derailment in Montana. What's up with that? Track maintenance? Is that all? Or was it sabotage? I don't know. We'll have to see. And leading the nation in new COVID cases, Alabama wants to steal $400 million in pandemic relief funds to build, wait for it, more prisons. That's Alabama for you. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where thousands of Tunisians protested the president's naked power grab. He was wearing clothes, but it's still a naked power grab. And in a clear rebuke of NATO, Erdogan said Turkey plans on buying more Russian defense systems. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Radio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln, and we thank Kelly for doing so. Thank you, Kelly. If you would then look across the page to the left from that chat room link near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will hopefully find the link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, and if you could afford, how about the cost of an espresso-type coffee drink, and if you could afford to send those funds our way, we are able to stretch those dollars beyond compare, and do we have such experience in doing so? Over 10 years. That's right. 10 years, more than 10 years of continuous 24/7, 365 resistance radio. And we've been able to do that because of the generosity of folks like you. That's right. So if you could afford to send those funds our way, we pool those funds with what we pull out of our own wallets, and then we pay our bills. We fly under the radar and continue this resistance against the Nazi takeover of America. And we thank you for your generosity in allowing us to fulfill our civic duty that the founders originally intended so many years ago. Thank you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, you can do so at Netroots Radio. That's so simple. Tom takes care of it, and he made it simple. Thank you, Tom. You could follow me on Twitter. In fact, I suggest you do, because if you do, you'll notice that I post the show notes and links diary for West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Also, the Justice Department Music Sans Frontiere when it's on Sundays. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before show times. And then I really scramble to get that linked up on social media platforms like Twitter. And you know who the others are. Mm-hmm. Anyway, follow me at Justice Putnam on Twitter. You can also follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, Deezer, and wherever podcasts can be found. Yeah, even Deezer. All right. This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, is out of the Associated Press by Andrew Zelsky. An Oregon school board has banned educators from displaying Black Lives Matter and gay pride symbols, prompting a torrent of recriminations and threats to boycott the town and its businesses. Newberg, a town of about 25,000 residents situated 25 miles southwest of Portland in gorgeous wine country, has become an unlikely focal point of a battle between the left and right across the nation over schooling. Now, Newberg has not been absent of racism in its past, let's be clear. I mean, after all, Oregon was first incorporated as a white utopia. No blacks allowed. But Newberg had a fairly liberal city council, fairly liberal school board, until the Nazis took over. Also, Newberg is home to one of the few, when I say few, I mean just a few, black-owned wineries in the whole state. Of course, she moved there and put in the vines long before the Nazis took over. Just so you know. The city council has condemned the action by the Newberg School Board. So did members of color of the Oregon legislature and House and Senate Democrats. The American Civil Liberties Union of Oregon is threatening to sue. The Oregon State Board of Education called on the school board to reverse course, saying student identities should be welcomed and affirmed. But the four conservative members, that's a nice way of calling them Nazis. And I'm not kidding. Of the 7-member board are digging in their heels. Member Brian Shannon, who proposed the ban, said lawmakers from Portland should keep out of the school district business and instead focus on Portland, where homelessness is an issue. Screw you, you Nazi. Opponents say the board has emboldened racists. On September 17th, a special education staffer at a Newberg elementary school showed up for work in blackface, saying she was portraying anti-segregation icon Rosa Parks in order to protest a statewide vaccine mandate for educators. She was immediately placed on administrative leave, and as of this writing, she has been fired. The same week, word emerged that some Newberg students had participated in a Snapchat group in which participants pretended to buy and sell black fellow students. Newberg Public School Superintendent Joe Morlock said there will be an investigation and disciplinary action will be meted out. Underscoring how deeply the board's action is cut, raw emotion was on display during a virtual public hearing of the board last Wednesday night. Some speakers said the board's action is harmful. Others said the signs have no place in schools, saying they're political. Well, you know what? Join America, you stupid Nazi. Local resident Peggy Kilberg said they should be banned from schools, as well as signs supporting any political position like the National Rifle Association posters. Yeah, good luck with that. Robert Till, who is gay and a sophomore at Newberg High School, said he is embarrassed to live in Newberg. He cited an estimate from the Trevor Project, a group that aims to end suicide among LGBTQ young people, that at least one LGBTQ person between the ages of 13 and 24 attempts suicide every 45 seconds in the USA. School board chairman Dave Brown, who voted for the sign ban, declared in an earlier Zoom meeting that I'm not a racist. You know what? Anytime someone says they're not a racist, it means they are. You don't need to tell anybody you're not a racist if you're not a racist. I work with and will always accept those around me no matter what, Brown said, an American flag pinned behind him. I don't care if they're gay. I don't care if they're white or brown or black. I work with everybody. Really? Really? You're a Nazi racist. Shut the F up. I don't think any of us can deny the fact that these symbols are divisive. They're only divisive to racists. Isn't that the point? Opponents of the ban say it is the board that is being divisive and distracting from the challenges as educators begin in-person instruction with safety protocols after a year of remote teaching because of COVID-19. It has been difficult to see a community divided. You can see the anguish on both sides. It makes being an educator harder than it already was, said a faculty member at Newberg High School. Speaking on condition she not be named, for fear of being harassed online and at her home, she said more students than ever are displaying gay pride and Black Lives Matter symbols on lockers, water bottles, and laptops since the board took its vote in August. The ban does not apply to students. Amy Beth Hansen, Martha Belisel, and Anita Snow of the Associated Press bring us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A team of investigators from the National Transportation Safety Board was at the site of an Amtrak derailment in north central Montana that killed 3 people and left 7 hospitalized yesterday, Sunday. The westbound Empire Builder was en route from Chicago to Seattle when it left the tracks about 4 p.m. Saturday near Joplin, a town of about 200. Trevor Fosson was first on the scene. The Joplin resident was on a dirt road near the track Saturday when he saw a wall of dust about 300 feet high. I started looking at that, wondering what it was, and then I saw the train had tipped over and derailed, said Fosson, who called 911 and started trying to get people out. He called his brother to bring ladders for people who couldn't get down after exiting through the windows of cars resting on their sides. The train was carrying about 141 passengers and 16 crew members and had 2 locomotives and 10 cars, 8 of which derailed. A 14-member team, including investigators and specialists in railroad signals, would look into the cause of the derailment on a BNSF railway main track that involved no other trains or equipment. Law enforcement said the officials from the NTSB, Amtrak, and BNSF had arrived at the accident scene just west of Joplin, where the tracks cut through vast golden brown wheat fields that were recently harvested. Several large cranes were brought to the tracks that run roughly parallel to U.S. Highway 2, along with a truckload of gravel and new railroad ties. Several rail cars could still be seen on their sides. The accident scene is about 150 miles northeast of Helena and about 30 miles from the Canadian border. Amtrak CEO Bill Flynn expressed condolences to those who lost loved ones and said the company is working with the NTSB, the Federal Railroad Administration, and local law enforcement, sharing their sense of urgency to determine what happened. The NTSB will identify the cause or causes of this accident, and Amtrak commits to taking appropriate action to prevent a similar accident in the future, Flynn said in a statement. Montana Governor Greg Gianforte said BNSF was readying replacement track for when the NTSB gives the go-ahead. BNSF has assured me they can get the line up and running in short order, he said. He doesn't care whether he knows whether it was sabotage or not. Gianforte. Railroad safety expert David Clark, director of the Center for Transportation Research at the University of Tennessee, said accident scene photos show the derailment occurred at or near a switch, which is where the railway goes from single track to a double track. Clark said the 2 locomotives and 2 cars at the front of the train reached the split and continued on the main track, but the remaining 8 cars derailed. He said it was unclear if some of the last cars moved on to the second track. Did the switch play some role? It might have been that the front of the train hit the switch and it started fishtailing, and that flipped the back part of the train, Clark said. Another possibility was a defect in the rail, noting that regular testing doesn't always catch such problems. He said speed was not likely a factor because trains on that line have systems that prevent excessive speeds and collisions. Kim Chandler of the Associated Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. Alabama is weighing the use of $400 million in pandemic relief funds to build new prisons, a proposal that state Republican leaders say would save taxpayer money, but that critics argue is not the intended use of the federal aid. Lawmakers today are scheduled to begin a special session focused on a $1.3 billion prison construction plan to build at least 3 new prisons and renovate others. The projects would be done in phases and funded with a $785 million bond issue, $150 million in general fund dollars, and $400 million from the state's $2.2 billion share of the American Rescue Plan funds. Governor Kay Ivey And Republican legislative leaders have defended the use of the virus fund, saying it will enable the state to essentially pay cash for part of the construction and avoid using state dollars as well as paying interest on a loan. We don't have to borrow quite as much money and pay all that money back, Ivey told reporters this week of why the virus fund should be used for prison construction. Republican Senator Greg Albritton, who chairs the Senate General Fund Budget Committee, said legislative leaders are comfortable they can legally use the money for prison construction. Albritton said part of the federal dollars are to replace revenue lost during the pandemic. He said that pot of funds has many, many fewer restrictions on how it is used, so they admit what they are doing is wrong. Dev Wakely, a policy analyst with Alabama Arise, said while the state may be legally able to use the money for prison construction, the purpose was to do things that will, quote, help everyday Alabamians in their lives and to smooth out the recovery. Alabama Arise is an advocacy organization for low-income families. He said the money could be used for items such as an expansion of the state's Medicaid program to provide medical coverage to previously uninsured Alabamians and child care programs. Congress surely did not contemplate that state governments deciding that, well, we're just going to use this money to actually improve. We're not going to use this money to actually improve the lives of people. Instead, we're going to blow $400 million on building fancy new prisons that don't even really get at the problem of the state incarceration system. A spokesman said the U.S. Department of Treasury does not pre-approve any specific use of the funds and has not issued a final rule on usage. Treasury officials say the department is monitoring all proposed expenditures and expects any state or local government that uses state and local funds in violation of the eligible uses to repay the misused funds to the federal government. All right, let's get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, Guilt and Redemption. Film buffs perk up when a new one from Paul Schrader hits screens. This one, called The Card Counter, is about the gambling technique in the same oblique way that The Taxi Driver, penned by Schrader in the 70s, was about driving a cab. Our protagonist is Oscar Isaac's character, William Tillich, fresh out of federal prison for his participation in the events at Abu Ghraib, and now, non-coincidentally, is using the name William Tell. His gig is traveling from casino to casino, staying in nondescript hotel rooms, ritualistically modified to make even more nondescript. Along the way, he meets Lalinda, Tiffany Haddish, who represents a syndicate that backs professional gamblers, Kirk, the 20-something son of another Abu Ghraib guard who had committed suicide, that's Ty Sheridan, and Major John Gordo, a commander from Abu Ghraib who had walked after the events there, brought off by William Dafoe. The latter is found pitching his security firm at a hotel where William is gambling. The young Kirk is stalking Gordo and preparing his demise, and attempts to enlist William's assistance in that effort. The film turns on his reaction to the offer. William's read-aloud diary entries serve as narration to the character study that emerges. Through Kirk, there is redemption. With Lalinda, a potential love interest, though the one scene suggesting this is so nearly a dream sequence that its context suggests its impossibility. And throughout, there's a haranguing poker competitor named Mr. USA, who's Ukrainian, who dresses in an American flag shirt and whose entourage chants USA, USA at every opportunity. The inappropriateness is the point. Nobody's being shy about the origins of the tale told in the card counter. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1903. That was the day that is remembered in Virginia as the wreck of Old 97. Old 97, also known as the Fast Mail, was a Southern Railway freight train. It carried the U.S. mail from Washington, D.C. to Atlanta, Georgia. The train wreck happened on the leg of the trip from Monroe, Virginia to Spencer, North Carolina. The train had come in late to Monroe. It was reported that the railway company ordered the engineer to increase the speed of the train to make up time. The company had to pay a penalty if they delivered the mail late. But when the train neared Danville, Virginia, the tracks curved at the Stillhouse Trestle Bridge. The speed was simply too much. Despite the engineer's efforts to slow the train, it careened off the tracks and plummeted to the rocky ravine 45 feet below. 11 of the 16 people on board the train died, including the conductor, the engineer, and the flagmen and both firemen. The railway company blamed the wreck on the deceased engineer. Newspapers across the country carried photos of the wreck. The disaster became the subject of multiple ballads. One version, by Vernon Dalhart in 1924, is thought to be the first million-selling country record in U.S. history. Johnny Cash recorded another well-known version of the song. In 1993, an alternative country band took the name the Old 97s, hearkening back to the disaster and the songs it inspired.
They gave him his orders at Monroe, Virginia. Said, Steve, you're way behind time. This is not 38, this is old 97. You must put her into Spencer on time.
For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 59 degrees Fahrenheit, only expecting a high of about 65. And we have periods of rain, which is happening even at this moment, and winds will be out of the southwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Rainfall between a third and a half of an inch today, and then partly cloudy overnight with a slight chance of a rain shower. Lows in the upper 40s, winds out of the west-southwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Sunshine and clouds mixed tomorrow with highs again only in the mid-60s with winds light and variable. Does that mean it's fall? Confirmed cases of coronavirus, of course, are not updated. These are totals from the end of Friday. We should get the updated totals tomorrow, maybe after showtime. But right now, confirmed cases in Jackson County stand at 213,036, in which 2 of those are my mother and I. And our deceased have again gone up and now stands at 267. And my mom isn't one of those numbers because she got vaccinated. All those that died, of course, these are the totals, but the majority of those who died were unvaccinated. Ragweed pollen is rated high right outside the window here in Rogue River proper. The air quality index for the region is good at 27 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is a full-time moderate level of 5. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 29.89 inches. Visibility is at 8 miles, and relative humidity is at 92%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 63 and partly cloudy. Paris is 65 and partly cloudy. Rome is 82 degrees and partly cloudy. Kyiv is 54 and fair. Kabul is 70 degrees and clear. Hong Kong is 80 and clear. Tokyo is 67 and partly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 59 degrees and mostly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 58 degrees and cloudy. And New York, is 70 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Tarek Amara of Reuters brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. River City Hash Mondays. Several thousand demonstrators rallied in the Tunisian capital yesterday, Sunday, to protest against President Kais Saied's seizure of power, calling on him to step down in the biggest show of public anger since his intervention. Saied this week brushed aside much of the 2014 Constitution, giving himself power to rule by decree 2 months after he sacked the Prime Minister, suspended Parliament, and assumed executive authority. The people want the fall of the coup, chanted the crowd on Tunis's Habib Bourguiba Avenue, a focal point of the demonstrations that ended the rule of former President Zine El Abidine Ben Ali on January 14th, 2011. They also chanted "Step Down." Police maintained a heavy presence around the demonstration and set up barricades. The crisis has endangered the democratic gains that Tunisians won in the 2011 revolution that triggered the Arab Spring protests and has slowed efforts to tackle an urgent threat to public finances.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Pumira Pamuk of Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. President Erdogan said Turkey still intended to buy a second batch of S-400 missile defense systems from Russia, a move that could deepen a rift with NATO ally Washington and trigger new U.S. sanctions. Washington says the S-400s pose a threat to its F-35 fighter jets and to NATO's broader defense systems. Turkey says it was unable to procure air defense systems from any NATO ally on satisfactory terms. In the future, nobody will be able to interfere in terms of what kind of defense systems we acquire, from which country, or at what level, Erdogan said in an interview that aired on CBS's News Face the Nation yesterday. Nobody can interfere with that. We're the only ones to make such decisions. The U.S. imposed sanctions on Turkey's defense industry directorate, its chief Ismail Demir, and 3 other employees in December, following the country's acquisition of the first batch of S-400s. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we'll meet up tomorrow for Terrytown Chowder Tuesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.